Ladies and gents, welcome to reaction. This is why is the US dropping billions of mutant flies from the sky? Watch our Kurzgesagt in a nutshell. Damn, alright, I love ecosystem videos like this. Because yeah, basically a butterfly effect of a kind, right? Because something is out of whack for some reason, maybe human made things, who knows, because that's how usually it goes. So people are correcting it by apparently dropping mutant flies from the skies. Alright. This is gonna be awesome. It's Kurzgesagt videos, obviously. Let's watch this one. Oh, there we go.
Radiation-blasted, flesh-eating flies are raining down over the jungles of Panama to commit a genocide that can never end. Their tiny bodies are rebuilding a wall of flesh that protects an entire continent. This is one of humanity's most successful wars, going on for over 50 years now, fought from Central America to the deserts of Libya. Okay, so what's going on? The unbeatable flesh-eating fly. We need to talk about one of the most terrifying parasites on Earth for a moment. Don't worry, we won't make it too gross. If you want to skip this part, jump to the next chapter.
Yep, there is a chapter, right? Start. Or skip the fun part.
Cochleomya hominivorax, which literally means the man-eater, the New World screwworm fly at home in the Americas. Each of these metallic blue-green flies with bright red eyes that exist in nature is here because it's feasted on the flesh of a warm-blooded animal. Cochleomya can detect wounds and smell blood across vast distances. If a human, a deer or a squirrel has the tiniest scratch, female screwworm flies will try to lay eggs in the wound. When they hatch, the worms start eating healthy flesh with sharp mandibles, causing horrible wounds, attracting even more flies. In serious cases, the animal will die or at least be severely weakened. Cochleomya doesn't add anything positive to the world and is a natural enemy of ours. For most of history, this parasite was simply a horrifying fact of life in the Americas. And then we accidentally created a paradise for them. As farmers introduced...
because of cows. Yeah, so we throw out ecosystem by just simply breeding different animals. Yeah, there are a lot of people who basically have this idea like every single species on the planet has a place in the ecosystem where it balances things. And yes, that is true unless we fuck it up, right? Like this, like by, herding cows and making, basically, making them this many. We throw it out of whack where flesh-eating flies are way too many there. And like, cause I said, like they don't add much to anything, right? Maybe in the past it would have, right? Where, they could have like eat flesh or something like, like some kind of recycling systems. Why the fuck not? But nowadays, they doesn't really contribute anything, right? In that way. But there are people who just, even to this day, if you, point blank environment, I don't even know if they're environmentalists, would say like, there is not a single thing on this planet who doesn't have a reason to exist, like this, like flies and shit, right? And if you do anything about it, we're gonna protest. I'm sure people are gonna protest about this, even though this is scientific, right? And it's very calculated. Like, that's just insane to me. Like, people have a real binary view of things. Like, okay, I'm just gonna see this, like a tunnel vision, see this and this, and not gonna see the context or science or nuance at all.
Introduced millions and millions of cows to the vast expanses of the southern US, screwworms became a catastrophic problem and a source of endless suffering for our defenseless cattle. One outbreak might wipe out herds and lead to cruel, lingering deaths for countless animals in the wild. Traditional pesticides were useless against Cochleomya because you couldn't poison something that lived inside a living animal's flesh. You couldn't prevent animals from getting injured or flies from finding wounds. The situation seemed hopeless, and Cochleomya was winning. Ranchers had to spend countless hours examining their herds, treating wounds, trying to protect newborns, watching helplessly as their animals suffered. And then two scientists in the 1950s had an idea that was too wild to be taken seriously at first. What if we kind of nuke the screwworms? Radioactive parasite factories. Screwworm flies have a major weakness. Female Cochleomya can lay up to 400 eggs multiple times. But they only mate a single time before they die at the ripe old age of 3 weeks. So what if we could somehow disrupt the mating process? What if we could flood the environment with sterile male flies? The females would waste their one and only chance at reproduction on males that couldn't produce offspring. An entire species could theoretically mate itself out of existence. But how do you sterilize millions of flies?
I'm sure somebody's gonna do similar shit to humans one day with evil plan like that James Bond level shit. I'm just sure of it. That shit's gonna happen. Oh, we can't implement anything at the global scale and population is rising. Here's the plan, Mr. Bond. That shit's gonna happen. Yeah, I mean, this just kind of makes sense. Sure, why not? Like, yeah, you stop breeding. There's not gonna be any eggs. Radioactive flies, why not?
Without killing them or making them too weak to compete for mates. Well, it turned out the timing to do this was kind of perfect. Scientists studying the effects of radiation had discovered that specific doses could damage reproductive cells while leaving the rest of an organism intact. So all we needed to do was figure out how high this dose was for Cochleomya, breed millions of flies, irradiate them, and release them over.
I'm sure this is not going to mutate them in any way. Like, no unforeseen side effects in the future. I'm sure nothing's going to happen. They're not going to become 20 foot big suddenly and going to fly and kill us like it's Fallout 4 or something. Definitely not.
Thousands of square kilometers. Imagine explaining this idea to someone in 1950. Imagine the scale of the damage and the suffering that Cochleomya caused for people to say, okay, sure, let's try this. Why not? To prove this could work, scientists built a screwworm paradise in Florida and shipped.
That doesn't mean much because herding is business itself, and when it comes about food and money, people will like jump to any solution. They won't think about it too much. Like, should we try? Is it going to solve the problem? Yeah, let's do it.
Millions of flies to the remote island of Curacao. Long trays were filled with ground beef and horse meat, animal blood, milk, and eggs. Thousands were bred, irradiated, and released into the wild in regular intervals. As the weeks and months passed, more and more of the Cochleomya on the island were infertile and mated with regular ones. First slowly, and then suddenly, they were no more. Completely eradicated.
Damn.
It was time to think much bigger. Over the next few decades,
there's another time where science doesn't fuck around. First with the nuclear bomb, now with this. Like, okay, I guess we're doing this shit. This is why people say the last word the humanity will ever speak. This is interesting, by some scientists, and that's it. No humans anymore. Some kind of like a catastrophic mistake, ripping the space-time apart or some shit, or ripping Earth apart or something.
A war was declared and professional worm factories established to breed them by the billions. A single plant in Texas alone needed 70 tons of meat and 12,000 gallons of blood to breed 150 million flies per week. The disgusting mix had to be kept warm because they had to believe they were inside a living animal. This lovely process made the insects smell so bad that airlines initially refused to transport them. Their transport boxes had to be sprayed with cologne just to get them on planes. Bit by bit.
I like how humanity's leisure comes into way of like science and actual good for the humanity. Shit, what the fuck is that? Like, I have a golf course here. What the hell is that smell? Yeah, we're doing something. Well, I don't care if you're doing something important. That smells.
In a slow-moving wave of biological warfare, the program eradicated screwworms. First from Florida, then across Texas, through Mexico, and into Central America.
Damn.
Every step required billions of sterile flies, massive coordination, and unwavering dedication from thousands of workers. It was an incredible victory of humanity over the horrors of nature. In 1988, the war suddenly became global, and for the first time ever,
I'm gonna wait for a video where somebody makes how Kurzgesagt is a liar and how he's paid by Bill Gates or something after this. Because whenever he makes positive videos like that type of video is always there. I'm sure somebody's gonna make that shit.
Screwworms escaped to Africa. The stakes were astronomical. If not stopped immediately, flesh-eating Cochleomya could move down the Nile Valley, around the North African coast, and conquer regions where medical care was scarce or non-existent. The potential suffering was incalculable. To stop this invasion, a Herculean operation was triggered immediately. Hundreds of millions of sterile flies were flown in. Ground teams inspected millions of animals for wounds. Communication campaigns explained to locals why planes were dropping boxes full of millions of flesh-eating American flies. But it worked. In just 4 months, the invasion was stopped. but Cochleomaya still held a firm grip over the Amazon rainforest and much of South America. An area too large, politically complicated and
I think it's near impossible to get rid of anything like this, especially in ecosystem. At least when something this small. So yeah, I think this is going to be stopped, but then it will resurge once again.
expensive to expand the war further. So a deal was made with Panama, the narrowest part of the continent. The US and Mexico would pay for a wall of flesh in the small country. It would prevent any screwworms from reaching the north ever again. Today, deep in Panama, a nuclear worm factory runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, producing an endless stream of sterile flies. The technology has come a long way from the early days. Instead of ground meat, a brown protein.
That's fucked up. Like, why would people have a problem? Like, okay, I get it. Like, it's turbulent area, but like, this is for the good of everyone, include obviously you. Obviously, it's gonna stop the spread, but it's gonna help you as well. So people are just saying no to that, and you need to create this kind of a wall at Panama where nobody can cross. It's kind of like this is one of the ways, like, okay, how humanity is enemy of themselves, right? Mostly politics and geopolitics come in the way. Like, this is science. Like, okay, play your geopolitics somewhere some other time, but not this time. Come on.
Protein sludge made from powdered blood, milk and eggs is piped into trays stacked in rooms kept at exactly the same temperature as living tissue. Thousands of flies are then carefully irradiated with precise doses of radiation, creating Cochleomaya that act normal but are dead inside. Each week, 100 million flies are loaded into rotating dispersal machines to be released mid-flight in a finely tuned balance of drop rate, speed and altitude. The flight paths are separated by precisely 1.6 kilometers in a choreographed aerial ballet, creating an invisible wall of sterile flies. Surveillance teams cover some of the most remote and challenging terrain to check animals for injuries and monitor for any sign of screwworm activity. Unfortunately, right now, the wall is failing and the war against Cochleomaya is far from over. Cochleomaya strikes back. In 2016, Cochleomaya somehow made their way back to the Florida Keys, turning the Paradise Islands into a nightmare. Key deer were suddenly walking around with gaping wounds. Millions of sterile flies were rushed in from Panama, creating a front around the outbreak and beginning the eradication again. Within months, the invasion was at least contained. And in late 2023, the wall in Panama failed and Cochleomaya struck back immediately.
See, like I said, this is common sense at this point. Something this small at this number, especially which lays this many eggs, even fuck up of 1 or 2 flies could just like flood everything. It's very easy to multiply. So this is like, you need to do it at the largest scale possible where no problem comes along. Like the way he said in the Amazon, like they're not ready to do that. Like, that's not how it's gonna work, right? It's how people work. You know, in COVID time, people saying like, okay, everybody needs to take vaccine. Even if some don't, virus gonna stay strong and live enough. Okay, there are like many scientific issues there, even with that statement. But you at least understand the baseline of like where that was going, right? And even there, people were like, no, I'm not doing this. And I get it, like vaccine and all the issue, but it's still vaccine. It works rather than nothing, rather than wishful thinking. So this is similar shit like that. If some don't do it, and others do, that doesn't mean much, right? Like you're constantly at the battle, and they can always multiply.
Immediately. Like a parasitic firestorm on speed, it spread again all over Panama and Costa Rica, burning through Central America and even reaching Mexico. The worm factory now produces sterile worms at maximum capacity. It's a real biological emergency, and it's not clear when it will be over. One day, we might be able to win the war against this.
What if these flies suddenly become resistant to this shit? Now you have to worry about it, because if life mutates that faster, that's a problem. Like how viruses become super viruses, but that shit happens at a very long time, not this fast. So it's near impossibility for flies to adapt to this. But if they do, like, damn, that would be scary shit. Like, people say, like, oh, okay, Earth is the best place for humans to live. Yeah, compared to Mars or something. But even Earth is not the best place for humans to live. Everything is trying to kill us and everything around it. That's the ecosystem we live in. Everything's going to kill everything.
Horrible monster. We did so before, and other parasites have been eradicated from much of the world or even entirely. So if you find yourself in Central America and see a low-flying plane overhead, maybe you're witnessing another day in one of humanity's most unusual wars. A war we can never stop fighting and can't afford to lose.
I mean, no shit.
Incredible breakthroughs are
Yeah, well, go to brilliant.org forces nutshell and support this channel. I love Kurzgesagt. He just dropped knowledge like that on me. I didn't even know this war was happening, but apparently there you go. I'm sure there's like 100 different wars like this happening around the planet. Scientists doing overtime, biological scientists, all different type of science coming together just to solve this shit, chemical science and everything. And people like, who needs scientists? The scientists thinks they're better than us. Yeah, they kinda are though. They are better than you because you're not living in Middle Ages, coughing with cholera and all the type of diseases. Like you're just like, yeah, Jon Snow and everything. Yeah, you don't have cholera, you don't have TB, coughing and all that shit. Yeah, scientists are kind of better than all of us. Well, that was why is the US dropping billions of mutant flies from the sky by channel Kurzgesagt nutshell. If you like my next one, don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you next time.